Good morning, Cecil. How are you?
Hey, Cecil.
Hey, coaches, how are y'all today?
We're okay. It's basketball season, as you know, and
Yeah.
um, big deal, I guess. Uh, Alabama is not played up to snuff, I guess you would say. I think they were picked fourth in the league, maybe. Um, give your evaluation of where they are and why they're that way.
Well, straight on one game. They play Thursday at noon, and that's all they need to be thinking about. Then nothing
Okay.
else happens after that until you find out how you perform in that game. You're on a neutral court against a team that just beat you by 2 points on their home court, so you've got to feel like you've got a chance. Now, how they've
Yeah.
ended up losing 5 games down the stretch. I think if you even in the preseason, even in November, even in August, I guess the schedules came out. You looked at the 5 game stretch at Kentucky, at Auburn, Florida at home, Arkansas at home, and at Texas A&M. You knew that was going to be a tough stretch. Doesn't mean that you thought you'd go 0-5, but you knew you needed to get some wins in the bank before you got into that stretch. I think in a couple of those games, I think at Kentucky, and I think at A&M, the effort was okay. They didn't execute some things. They didn't. Obviously, if you lose, there are things you could do better. But I think the disappointment is not defending your home court, and then giving yourself a chance. Against Arkansas, against Florida, and Florida's playing well. You see how they
Yeah.
closed the season. But I think if they had played even as well as they played against Kentucky or A&M against Arkansas, they could have won. They could have won that game. So they're inconsistent. I think that comes with youth, and they're still struggling with identity, still struggling with lineups, still struggling with who's going to play, and that's not where you want to be at the end of the regular season.
Cecil, I think you hit the nail on the head. We said that in the first hour, and there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. I think Avery, he's honest and open with the media. They ask him about NCAA tournament, and he answers it. Where, a guy like Nick Saban, if you try to talk about a playoff when he still had games going up, he would go off on you guys. He would go into one of his rants. There's different, and I think you're right. They can't worry about the NCAA tournament. That's out of their control. They got to just focus in on what do I got to do to get better today to get ready to win this first game against Texas A&M. That's all, because the opportunities are still there. But I think maybe it's just a different philosophy as to how the coaches handle those things between not necessarily Coach Saban and Avery, but just maybe talk about the differences there as you guys meet with these coaches.
Well, the first big difference right now in the two programs, in the way Coach Saban handles it and Avery handles it. Coach Saban's got a roster full of guys, even with the amount of guys that he has who leave early. But next year, every player on the team except the freshman will have been through the college football playoff, won it, lost it, seen how you do things differently. He doesn't have to tell them; they know. There's not a player on the Alabama roster that's ever sniffed the NCAA tournament. They don't know, or a lot of them the SEC tournament. They don't know how to prepare, how to deal with it, what the atmosphere is going to be like. So you have to try and impart some of that to them. Nick doesn't have to do that. His guys know. They knew, and I think it showed this year when they played Clemson. They knew what they had to do. They knew what the situation was. They weren't going to be rattled by the situation because they've been in that situation their whole careers.
Yep.
If they're fortunate enough to beat A&M, and I think they can. I mean, I don't know if they will.
I don't know if they will.
No, but at least we know who they play.
Right.
And the Auburn rivalry needs to be a rivalry on both sides, and I think it is. comment on that rivalry as in the last few years. Not because I was crazy when we played them. I'm not asking for anything, but talk about that rivalry.
Well, obviously it's better when both teams are good or playing for something and are competitive. So I think, and again, this probably isn't the mindset the players need to have, but it would be the mindset. I think if they can get face Auburn, I think they'd be pretty fired up to play them. You know, they got manhandled pretty good down there in the second half. Crowd got on them. You know, Auburn, as they have done in most of their games this year, and this is partly just Bruce's personality. They celebrate a lot. They whoop and holler, and they should be proud of what they've accomplished. That's not the point. But I think it'd be something that Alabama would be excited to have a second opportunity.
Yeah, good point.
Cecil, you go around all these different SEC schools, basketball. How good, and I guess maybe I took it for granted. I talked about this earlier, what Dad did when he was here. It was remarkable to go 10 tournaments out of 12 years. But as this Alabama job is now, what is a realistic goal as far as going to the NCAA tournament for a program like Alabama now?
Well, there's two ways to look at it, I guess. Barry, I think if you assume that everything sort of changes from year to year and you're going to have up years and down years, you'd still like to make it 50% of the time, which they certainly hadn't done in the last 5 years, and that's not certainly not all on Avery. But at the same time, let's set aside Kansas and Duke and North Carolina. That's not what we're talking about. But, Wisconsin won't make it this year, but they made it 19 years in a row. Xavier going to be 13, 14 years in a row for them. Those are programs. You can be as good as those programs. Your league's tougher in the case of Xavier, but, you're not going to go every single year. There's nobody in the league. Kentucky hadn't gone every single year in the last 10 years. But you'd sure like to go 6 or 7 times out of 10, and you'd like to be consistent. You'd like to put yourself in the mix every year. I think Florida and Kentucky have done that. Now, Tennessee and Auburn this year, it'll be the first time for both of them in a long time. Missouri too. So it shows you can turn it around. And then the next trick is to sustain it. They're still in the phase of turning it around.
I had a guy tell me that I was very consistent. I never could get past 516. He introduced me that way one time as a guy that couldn't get past 516. Go ahead, Barry. I just laughed about that.
Cecil, how good was this league? I know it's getting a lot of praise nationally, but as we all looked at it, I don't think you had Tennessee and Auburn in your preseason predictions to win this league. But I do think it is a good league top to bottom without a great team. You've seen all these teams in person. How good is this league, Cecil?
Well, if you had told me that Tennessee, Auburn, and Missouri would all be in the top 5, I'd have thought you were crazy. So it's better because it's better at the bottom. Vandy wasn't as good this year, but you still have to go in there and play them. And so if you draw them on the road, that's a tough break. Ole Miss was better when Alabama played them. I think when Andy left, they kind of seemed to have packed it in a little bit, but it's better because the LSU's and the Missouris and the Auburns are a lot better. So credit to them. They also scheduled better in December. That's why they're going to get more teams in the NCAA this year.
Cecil, let me turn to something else, if you don't mind, to football.
Sure.
Alabama's going to hire Butch Jones. Is this a hire to be darn sure that they know the personnel of Tennessee? That may not be a very good question because I guess they know it anyway. But is this a hire to know the inside of Tennessee better because that's a big game, or is this a hire that he thinks he can help him analyze his offense?
I mean, that's something you get from it, but I don't think that's the reason that you're doing
okay.
it. I don't
Good.
think Nick's going to go hire somebody that was at LSU and somebody that was at Auburn. The guy's got to be able to help you beyond that. That's one game prep. The guy's got to be able to Nick's bringing in a lot of young assistant coaches, and so you've got to be able to help those guys. And a veteran coach like Butch, he could help those guys. So I don't think it's as much knowing Tennessee's ins. Probably more if they'd beaten you 10 times in a row instead of you beating them 10 times in a row. But, it does come with it. I mean, he does know it, but it's a situation where he has a job to do, whether it's breaking down offensive film, but also I think helping some younger coaches, and that's why you hire a veteran guy like that. Nick is good at identifying what somebody's strengths are and taking advantage of those strengths. Lane, for instance, you didn't hire Lane to know what happened his 1 year at Tennessee, but he's a great play caller. So I think that it is something that they'll have, and if they have a specific question about this or that about Tennessee, they can ask him. But they know what Jeremy's about. They know what Jeremy's going to do.
That's probably a stupid thing I said, but I think Barry makes a good point in that people need people. I don't particularly worry about what fans think, but I do. I did when I was a basketball coach. People need to appreciate the staff that they have. Not that the new guys are going to come in and be the smartest guys ever made. They're going to hire a guy from Penn State who's going to do things differently. But somewhere along the line, the appreciation for the staff that they had, and you've already mentioned a couple of them, sometimes goes by the wayside. And he made that point the other day on our show, and I thought it was an excellent point. That they need to appreciate what's gone on in the past and hope for the future is going to be the same.
Sure, they do. It's a gamble. It's a gamble for Nick. He doesn't know 100% how these guys are going to work out. The thing about Nick is he'll see, and the ones who do well will do well, and the ones who don't, he'll make a change. So.
So last question we have to always ask about Tua and Jalen. Do you see Nick Saban when the spring practice is over? First of all, I don't think he'll name a starter. He never has. But will he sit those guys down individually and tell them where they are? I know he always likes to leave the summer open, the competition open, so guys work extremely hard. But will these guys, you think, will they have a feel as to who's going to be the starter after the spring, or will that thing still be open like always with Coach Saban?
I think he'll, obviously he'll sit down with both guys and both families and discuss what the situation is and be honest with them about it. When you see him bring in a transfer quarterback, that lets you know that doesn't guarantee that somebody's going to leave the program, but at least it shows that they're getting some. I think he'll make it clear to him, but I don't think he'll name a starter or come out and say, "Oh, well, this guy's going to play against Louisville," probably until the Friday before Louisville, if he does it then.
Yeah, that's just all right. Cecil, when you headed over to St. Louis?
I'm going up Wednesday. I'll get there in time for Wednesday night's games, and think Thursday's going to be an interesting day. I think that's four good games. Friday could be, not to put the cart ahead of the horse, but if you had Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky, Missouri, I think you'd have a full house and pretty raucous pair of games.
Well, Cecil, Dad will be over there. Make him buy you lunch or something while y'all are over there. All right, y'all discuss old times.
Sounds good.
I'll buy it down to the press room.
You gonna be there for Hollywood?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be there for Hollywood. I called him. I didn't tell him I was coming because I wasn't sure, and I'm going to go and be able to hug him when he walks off because he he had a hard time with me when I wouldn't let him shoot the way he wanted to. But we're big buddies, and I look forward to he raised Cain, and then when he came to tip-off club, he told everybody how good I was. So I appreciated it, and hopefully we helped him some in the pros. Anyway, I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm gonna hug him.
I went and saw him in Meridian. Merrick came and played Meridian when he was there one time, and at the end of the third quarter, he had 14 points, and he finished the game with 40.
Yeah,
he scored 26 points in the fourth quarter.
He had a hard time with me.
He could light it up. My guy could light it.
He got over it, and I love him. He's a great guy. He's building houses in
really.
He's building houses in Vegas, but I've given it some thought. I've decided I'm not going to buy one.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if you were going to retire to Vegas.
Thanks, Cecil. Have a safe trip over to St. Louis.
Talk to y'all from up there, man.
Thank you.